Well, figured I'd pop in real quick. We're having a cloudy day, not a lot going on, so figured we'd see what's going on out here in the world. Give a second for everybody to come in that wants to come in and see this. I think I set up everything so that we don't have to worry about trolls. I made it so it's subscriber only, so hopefully that'll help. Last time it was brutal. It's been a while since I've done a live, but it was pretty brutal. Okay, so one thing I want to say, because I know nobody's in here right now, or somebody is, but when people start filtering in or they watch it, and then I want to get this out of the way. For the members, I have not been doing the lives. I've just been really, really busy. But that's kind of what this is all about. So we're going to start that back up. And I kind of wanted to go on to this with the goal of discussing growing enough food in our gardens for 1 year. You know, how is that possible? Can we do that? And I think it doesn't matter what kind of garden you have, what size, I mean, within reason. But how much does it take to grow enough food to survive off of for a year? I use the word survive because I don't want to confuse that with thrive. I think it would be really hard to grow enough food for you to maintain and gain, and let's just call it what it is, weight, right, at the same time. So I don't know. And I think my goal on here for Sandy Bottom Homestead, or at Sandy Bottom Homestead, was never to provide all of our own food. My goal from the beginning has always been growing about 80% of our food. That's really been my goal. So with that in mind, you know, upping that 20%, what does that take? And I think no matter what size garden you have, within reason, I mean, you can't have like a pot and say, hey, I didn't grow enough food. You know, I mean, we got to be realistic about it. And how many people are in your family? How many people you're going to be trying to feed? You know, is it possible to do that? So that's what we're going to be exploring over the winter, because this is really when historically my channel has really shined, because I start thinking starting now about next year's planting. And we want to plant as efficiently as possible, as much as possible, but we want to get it in at the right times. And we want to be rolling things over at the right times too, meaning switching out beds and stuff like that. So that's where we're going with this. And I wanted to come on the live today just to kind of break the ice, you know, and really get your thoughts on it too. I mean, y'all are the ones watching it. I don't really have to talk about it because I can do it and figure it out on my own. But I didn't know if, you know, the listeners and stuff like that wanted to, or the viewers wanted to see something like that and maybe have that conversation. And it's not a 15-minute video conversation, because it's complicated. It's very complicated, and it takes a lot of planning and a lot of effort. So, and hey to everybody that's coming in. I don't know. Let's see here. Only channel members of 10 minutes or longer can send messages. Okay, so y'all can send messages if you've been subscribed for more than 10 minutes. Cool. So at any point, if y'all got anything to say about this, drop it in the chat and we can, you know, go from there. And I think it's a really important conversation. You know, you never know what is around the corner. You never, ever know. We were talking about that yesterday on the Backyard Gardens podcast for the Halloween episode. We did a little scenario, and it was a survival type scenario. And there was parallels within that to 2020, right? And I'm very aware that a lot of y'all are pandemic gardeners, which is a stupid name. You just happen to start growing at the right time, which is exactly where this comes from. Because let's say you are by definition a pandemic gardener, meaning you freaked out when the pandemic started and you started gardening. Well, you did exactly what you're supposed to do. If you didn't grow before, congratulations, you did right, So yeah, but we were talking about that, and it just started, the wheels started spinning fast, and I couldn't stop it. And I know that a lot of people, they want to provide for their own family and even friends, but at the same time, financially, it gets harder and harder and harder. And I don't know if it's really, the jury's up. Depending on how successful you are in your garden, it's tough to come across and say, like, hey, I'm saving a shitload of money growing food, because there's a lot of effort going into it, and you can get upside down in it really fast. So the financial part is really big too. There's so many different avenues to that. And because you're watching the live today, I'm going to go ahead and tell you right now, there's a video coming out, and I'm talking about planting perennials. If you get something, and when I'm referring to perennials, I'm not really, flowers are obviously covered in that, but I focus mostly on food and what it takes to sustain life. Now is the time to plant those. Hey, Dan Lowe. So now's the time to plant those. So, you'll see that next week, but at the same time, just know that it is the time to do it. So, man, I'm almost out of my drink. I messed up. It's terrible. What if I get a dry mouth? So, I was looking at it, and I was thinking about my garden, and I was thinking about how can I up the production in it? What is it going to take for me? Right now, let me see. Let me do the calculations real quick for you. I have 9 4x8 beds, so 32 times 9, plus 2, I believe they're 3x6 beds. So I have 324 square feet of growing space. That is not much. This room is bigger than that, maybe. Is it? Either way, that's not a lot of space. So in that 324 feet of growing space, what can I do to ensure that we can grow enough for a year? And this is an open conversation. So if y'all got ideas, by all means. But I mean, there's a few people watching. What size are your gardens? Do you know how many square feet your gardens are? Ooh, that's terrible. That's old too. I need to be siding my chicken coop. I need to rebuild mine. So I'm looking at my garden, and I'm thinking, I don't want to expand it. I feel like it's just the right size to where I can grow a lot in it, or I can, if it gets to be too much, I can let some rest. And that's kind of what I'm doing now. But I don't want to grow it. I don't want to shrink it. I don't want to add on to it. And I don't want to incorporate containers into it. I've added containers into it before, and I don't like growing in containers. It's just not for me. It's too much maintenance and effort, watering and maintaining them and the soil and stuff like that. So I don't want to do that. But I think by working on the timing of things going into the ground, I think it's going to work a lot better. I think, let's see, my planting dates. So let's not worry about the greenhouse in this conversation. Just in general, my planting date for my garden in the spring, for the spring, not in the spring, for the spring, it starts February 14th, roughly. So by starting earlier, around that time, the 14th, and really paying attention to what's going in where. So at that time, let's see, what are we going to plant? Broccoli, cabbage, potatoes, and if we're going to grow snow peas. Those will all go in about that time. Now, the question is, are those crops going to give me enough to satisfy this requirement? Because if I want to grow all my food for a year, as a lot of you do you grow some of the food that, or all the food that you've grown in the past, or do you start to reel it back and say, no, I need to focus on highly productive plants that are going to grow and grow a lot? Which one does that do? I would like to think that I wouldn't amend my garden plan at all. Oh man, Danley, you got to give me a number, man. You got me doing math in my head. I don't do math in public. 64 and 64, that's a big number. And then 56. Oh man, let me get my calculator out. I'm not even going to try. 64 plus 64 plus 56 plus 3 wild beds where I have 100. Is that 120 feet per bed or for all 3? I got 304, dude. But I could have been reading it wrong too. Let's just say that maybe I read it wrong. But still, that's a lot. So, how much can you do that? Now, on the flip side, we also have peach trees, and we've got blueberry bushes that are not in the gardens. So that adds to the weight that we can put in there. So, and when I say weight, what I mean is the weight of the vegetables that we go. So for instance, we eat, our blueberries last us roughly 3 months. So for 3 months, we're not really eating anything else. But then after that, what's next, right? And so on the perennial side, we can add something in. I'm not sure. Actually, no, I am sure. So we want to add in a fig tree. That will give us something. Let's see, figs are usually harvested around August-ish. So our peaches come in, we'll be getting those about July. And then August-ish would be our figs. So if we got figs, if we did that. So, you're looking from the perennial side of it, you're looking and getting food from roughly May into July, and then August, September. So that's 4 months taken care of. So what else can we do, right? And that's the trick. What else is there? And I don't really know off the top of my head. I'm going to have to be looking at it and see. A lot of times what I do, like right now, we go and we buy our fruit trees. They're like $10 in the fall. So we'll buy those and we'll stick them in the ground. And if it's a wet fall, it's usually fine. And if it isn't, then, it's kind of an issue. But we try to do that, and then that will help us get to going. So I need to go to a store and see my local store, which I go to Tractor Supply, believe it or not. They're super cheap, and get those. And so far, everything's worked out well. Let's see, 300 square feet, both in-ground gardens. So that's a good size. Yeah, it sucks. They're so expensive. You just get them in the fall and in end of the year. Hey, Barry. Hey, Brian. So I was saying earlier too, this subject is going to be a lot of what I'm focusing on for lives in the future, and meaning the member lives and stuff like that. So I wanted to use this as like an introduction, and it's not really to like, hey, you should become a member. I mean, obviously, I would appreciate it if you did because it helps a lot, but it doesn't matter. But I want to get everybody's opinion. Is that something that you guys are curious about, like what it takes to grow your own food? And before you answer that, think about it this way. And this is my fear when I really start to think about it, is it could potentially flip everything that I've planned up on its head and make me almost start over from not scratch, but really close. And that makes me really nervous. Because I don't, a lot of planning goes into this because not only am I planning the garden, but we're also planning the videos for here and the podcast and stuff like that. So it can shake it up quite a bit. So is that something y'all are interested in doing? And there's also nothing wrong with just being like, no, I just want to grow food. I just want to have a tomato plant and make my own salsa. I have a friend I got a tomato plant, I got a pepper plant, I got a cilantro plant. I'm good. Danla, you are easy. Okay. So I mean, we'll shop that a little bit, and I'm starting to look at it now and making a garden plan for next year because I do all of my seed ordering. Usually by December, I've ordered all of my seeds that I need. My budget in the past few years has been like $60, and this year I'm lowering my budget to $25 for seeds. So I'm trying to really like reel that in. I mean, I practice what I preach. You know what I'm saying? I'm like, get on here and tell you like, hey, you don't need to buy a bunch of seeds, get the right stuff. I got to do the same thing. So I'm trying to cut that down so I'm not as dependent. So we'll see how that goes. I was just thinking too. So y'all know how I've got that watermelon bush or a plant that was planted late that's not really producing. Well, it's starting to get big, and lo and behold, today I got a baby watermelon. So I was just thinking like where to move like that plant. You know what I'm saying? So like next year we can get better, or can I prepare the bed for it earlier than it was this year? Sparrow, I don't know what that last word means. If you can clarify that a little bit. Do I buy trees by varieties labeled, or do you buy generic labeled trees? I don't really care. Really, all of them have been a variety. So I don't. I have two peach trees. I have no clue what variety they are because I took the tag off and threw it out. But what I do know is I looked at them and I made sure to, um, well, explain it to me real quick, Sparrow, and then we can talk about it. Just give me a little elevator pitch. Um, I Google it while I'm there, like the variety, so I can see. And my phone just tried to start looking stuff up. That's stupid. So I try to see like the maximum temperature, the minimum temperatures, the fertilization requirements, the growing habits, all that stuff. So it's kind of a process for me when I go to buy a tree or a plant, but it's worth it because I have absolutely gone in there and had my hands on two different trees and Googled them and took my hand off of one completely because it just wasn't for my area at all. And why is,
This seems like a fragment of a larger thought.
Yeah, it is a fragment of a larger thought, idiot. I wasn't talking to you. Stop listening to me, Google. So, so I don't know anything about that. It doesn't seem like it would be very beneficial at all for. So it's neonicotinoids. Neonicotinoids. It's like a nicotine. It sounds like. I'll read about it, but I'm not really into talking about stuff I don't know. Here, let me just look it up real quick. Neonicotinoids. A class of neuroactive insecticides used in agriculture, pest control, for pet treatments. It's chemically similar to nicotine, which is what has been thought to be the cause of honeybee collapse. They are systemic, meaning they are absorbed by plants and circulated through all tissues. Da 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 da. So the question I would be looking at for these is, can a consumer buy them? Let's look it up. Regulations. Yes, you can still buy products containing the nicotine stuff. Not even trying to say that word, it's above my pay grade. And it is becoming more and more restricted as a lot of states are banning it. There you go. So I don't know. Nothing has had a label on it saying it's got that in there. So maybe. But I can tell you that none of my bees are dying, and I've got bees all over those plants. So I think we're good. And typically speaking, too, if you're buying something that's got that in there, that cost is going to be factored in and passed down to you. So if you go in there and you're going to buy a tree, doesn't say anything about it, right? It's just peach tree. And I go to buy this one that's $50 versus this one that's $10. Well, why is this one $50? Probably because it's got that crap in it, and the pay for the research and all that. So that's just my personal thought. I don't know if that's the case. It's the way it's used so from what I understand, and I am not an expert, so it's the way it's used, and probably something else added to it to use it as an insecticide. That's the problem. So the problem is the real worry is the lack of biodiversity around the crops doing this, meaning it's weird if you think about it. Like, everybody hates the squash vine borer. Everybody. But there's a purpose behind the squash vine borer, right? There's a grand purpose behind that animal. But we may not know that something may feel. Look at the milkweed, for instance. Milkweed. Nobody loved the milkweed until they learned that the monarch butterfly only feeds on the milkweed. So now everybody's got to grow milkweed. So it's just, there's stuff like that, If you look into different areas too, you can see where people have tried to, eradicate something and then cause like 2 other problems, and then they have to reverse it or something like that. So, bought a beautiful lemon orange trees over the internet, destroyed them. Yeah, so the way that the bees would work is, I imagine if it's in the tissue of the seed or goes into, then they take the pollen and the nectar back to the hive, and that could cause an issue. But I have not seen that. I do have a friend who lost a bunch of bees this year, but it wasn't because of that. It was because of the overspray from the farm nearby sprayed and got the bees, and then they brought it back to the hive. So he lost 2 or 3 hives, I believe. It's not a pretty sight. Yeah, Brian, but you got to you plant them at the right time and take the steps. So like I plant them now, I water them in good. We still have, if I had to guess, we're probably 5 weeks away from our first frost. So we've got 5 weeks of decent weather for that tree to kind of get a little bit more comfortable. Then we go ahead and we mulch really heavy on top to insulate the roots, right? That's what you care about, is the roots. The top of the tree, whatever, you can cut that tree right off at the base and it's going to regrow. It doesn't matter. If you keep the roots alive, you're good. So, and a lot of times too, the first year you get a tree, it doesn't do anything. It just sits there. So if you have to chop off part of it, fine, whatever. Brian is in the Midwest, Dan Lowe. I do know that. Not that I'd be creeping or nothing. So this is, the fruit trees are a real hot topic for me right now because it is that season to plant them. I learned years ago. Well, Dan Lowe, it's not the zone. You know that. It's not the zone. Don't say zone. Hey, Eddie, it's because I don't do a lot of lives. I've been too busy, but I'm trying to break that habit and get into a routine. So I'm glad you are here with us. Well, let's take Brian's example or problem for a minute. And let's say you plant a tree and it gets too cold. What is too cold? And a lot of times, the reason why I didn't buy a tree was because the temperature requirement was not good for me, right? So our lowest low temperature is supposed to be 18 degrees, and I've seen it get down to 8 degrees a few times in the past few years. So if you think about that, if you go and you're going to buy a tree, I don't buy a tree that unless it goes below what they say my lowest low temperature is. So my lowest low is like 15, I believe. Let me give you what the book says here. Let's see. Okay, now it's being stupid. It is 15 to 20 degrees. So the peach tree I bought, I believe, can go down to 5 degrees. And so I built that in because I knew that was possible to come in. Now, let's just throw a number out there. There was one that can go to like -20. Well, I may not want to use that here because everybody will tell you how cold it can get, but they won't tell you about the heat. But what I have learned over the years is the colder that plant can take, the less heat it can take at the same time. So we regularly get into the upper to mid 90s. Hell, this year we stayed there for like 2 months, even breaking 100 a few times. So you got to look at that and think, well, what kind of stress is that going to put on the plant? And then the other thing too is how much watering did we do? Because did you get a wet winter? Did you get a wet fall? Were you able to keep it nice and wet? Because when you plant the tree, you really, really, really need to saturate the ground, because what that does is it gets all the little air bubbles out of there and really penetrates and gets the soil back around the roots and makes contact with the native virgin earth that you put it in so that it can grow. So there's a lot of factors, but a cold snap can hurt. Absolutely. We've had that happen. We have a tree here and it's supposed to go down to well below freezing, and it died. And it hit at the right time. It started to bloom, and then we got a hard freeze, and I had two of them side by side. One of them died, one of them didn't. This kind of is what it is. Keep seeing these little crowns next to y'all. Oh, y'all are getting XP for commenting. Well, congratulations on getting XP. So that's what we're talking about doing. I'm going to really be focusing on that in the videos over the winter, to just trying to help get those juices flowing and people learning, what they can do to up the production in their garden. And hopefully we can meet that goal. So my goal is 80%. What kind of goals do y'all have for your ultimate goal for your garden? What percentage do you want to have for your produce coming in? Danlo, I have no idea what it's for. I clicked on it because I kept seeing these little crowns pop up, which, by the way, you are number 1. So you get 75 XP. And I have no clue what that XP is for. If y'all want more XP, you just got to talk more, I guess. I don't know. I don't know if you get a prize or anything. Yeah, Barry, if you're planting a citrus tree, first of all, can it grow in your area naturally? A lot of people want to grow citrus trees, and I don't think it's always the best idea. There's so many other trees to grow. And one reason why I don't really want to grow a citrus tree is because it's the only fruit I can get in the wintertime. I don't want any more of it. You know what I mean? So I wish I could grow a mango tree. $54 wants 70%. I like that number. I think that's a good realistic number. Brian, that's a good realistic number. So Barry, you said you're in zone 9, which it does matter for orange trees, or I'm assuming it's an orange tree. That is the top end of what an orange tree can survive. So be prepared to wrap it and cover it and insulate it in the wintertime. There's somebody up here that has a peach tree, but they wrap blankets around it all winter, and I don't want to do that. So yeah, I mean, you can do stuff like Danlo just said. Ash, you missed it all, man. Well, Sparrow, I don't know. Given full reign to spray appeal and organ appeal on our food, how long will you trust it? I don't trust it, but I don't know. That's an interesting question. So, Danla, you know how I broke that mold? I started harvesting everything, and now I take and I put when I bring in the basket, I leave it right on the counter, and it forces my wife to put it up and manage it, and that's how she broke buying the vegetables. Because if I would come in and just put them away, then they would get lost in the mix. But she is able to keep like a mental list of what we've got. So maybe that can help you. But 50% is good. And I think if 50% is very, very achievable, especially with what you have. You should be able to get up to 50%. So the top things here, Ash, here's one for you. If you want to get more, the top things is spacing, timing, and fertilizing, and rotation. And when I say rotation, I'm not just referring to crop rotation. I'm referring to getting those plants out when they don't need to be. Stop growing side shoots and grow something else in its place. And you're just wasting so much space, right? So, for instance, if I had grown my broccoli for side shoots this year, my corn would have gone into that bed about 1 to 2 months later, and that wouldn't have done me any good. Yeah, wasteful family. You know what, Danless, she got mad at me too, but I just kept doing it. I'm stubborn like that, and it worked. I'm glad that we do it that way now. When we would have discussions about it, I'd always say, I grow it, I take care of it, I harvest it. What else you want me to do? And so then it goes from there. I have learned to grow what you, things are coming in fast. To grow what you will eat is to grow what grows. For some people, this can be temperate climate crops, zone 6 or tropical zone 7. Some varieties won't grow. Exactly. If more people knew that, everything on this channel would be more efficient. And I don't know a way to make, actually, I do know a way. All right, well, in a couple weeks, you'll see it. But I've seen it creeping up in the comments in the last video about stuff that I won't grow anymore. I've seen that what Ash just said coming up over and over in the comments, and it's really interesting. People up north are having issues growing certain things. I have issues growing certain things here. Batavia, who lives in Chicago, is on the Backyard Gardens podcast with me. She has issues growing different things, and I don't want to get into too much because I don't want to spoil anything that we may be doing in the future. But it all kind of revolves around that. And it's this thing that, let me put my tinfoil hat on for a second, that the seed companies have tricked us into making us think that we can grow everything and anything in our gardens at any point. And let's just call summer, in the summer season. There's a lot of deception, but it's also not intentional by their part. Part of it's like, hey, and I get it. Hey, we're going to offer it to you. If you buy it, that's on you. Right. But I don't like that. I think it's rude. Ash, I see people all the time on here that grow broccoli in the summertime, and it breaks my heart for them. Dan Lowe, it takes an extra 6 weeks minimum once it starts to go fully bolt, and just leave those seed pods on until they dry up on the plant. Just once they start turning brown, start checking them so that they don't burst open and drop all the seeds, because you'll get probably 5,000 seeds off of one plant. It's amazing. Brian, what do you mean by what's coming? Can you elaborate on that? Yeah, Miss Full Roller. Hope I said that right. Yeah, brassicas, you plant them. If you're in the southeast, you plant them in February, and they come out of your garden by, at the latest, May. They should come out. And that's just, you start learning that kind of stuff, and that's how we're going to meet our goal. That's how we're going to get 80%, 90%, 95%. Is that simple task of planting plants at the right time is going to change everything. Are the pods still green? And are they full size? Brian, I thought you were talking about stuff like that. I just wanted to make sure before I jump to conclusions. This is. Let's say that you wanted to be prepared, prepped for something. You can, and I think a lot of people in the beginning of 2020, they learned, the pandemic gardeners, and you can definitely start there, but it starts way before anything happens, right? And so anybody who is any type of concern about anything that could disrupt any kind of system that we have needs to be focusing on growing food to some extent, learning knowledge about it. Doesn't mean you have to have a huge garden, but you have to be prepared to make your garden bigger if you need to. You should be pretty soon, as long as it doesn't get too cold, Danlo. It'll take, well, cold meaning what? What is cold? Brian, are you eating your produce out of your garden still? I know you had said something about not eating as much out of your garden this year. So that's what we're going to be talking about. So we're getting into the planting season, and so a lot of the conversations are going to be around that. But you got to think, Danlo, 40 is not cold for broccoli. 40 is cold for you, but not broccoli. Broccoli is just fine. If you're really worried about it, just cover the plant, somehow make some kind of blockage so that the rain doesn't get it too wet. So yeah, a lot of these conversations that we'll have in the channel and on lives is going to be geared towards this in the future. This is the planting season, and it's part of it. And it's a time to reflect on this year's garden and really look and see like what went wrong, what went good, what can I do different, all that stuff. I have not tried to raise meat rabbits. I don't want to. They're too cute. I'll shoot them in the wild. I go rabbit hunting, but I don't want to raise them and kill them. Sorry to hear that, Brian. We all have years like that sometimes. Well, thank you, Kern. Blueberries love sandy soil. That's why we have blueberry plants here. This area is known for blueberries and sweet potatoes, and that's why we focus on growing both of those. It just makes sense. Yeah, that's something too, Brian. That's interesting. I wish there was a better way on here. In the comments and stuff like that for all this, I want to know what people are changing in their gardens, what they feel like they need to change. Oh, damn. It's funny, Sparrow. I can't grow a blackberry to save my life. My mom, on the other hand, she gets gallon bags of it, like 4 or 5 gallons of them off one plant. I can't. I've had blueberry plants and they just don't grow. I'd like to go back to the drawing board on it, but at the same time, I kind of don't care. So I'm sorry to hear that, Eddie. Hopefully it'll get better. You know, the other thing, Sparrows, I don't really like blackberries that much. So I don't know if I really want that many blackberries. Yeah, we've got wild blackberries that grow, but the ones that I planted just suck. Maybe I'll move them this year if I can find them. All right, everybody. I just wanted to come on and kind of break the ice. It's been a while, but we're going to be talking about this. So maybe I'll change the title to like intro or something. I don't know. I don't want people to think that like, hey, this is, we're going to give you the definitive answer, because it's just not possible to give in, a couple, in 45 minutes. You can't. This is such a long process. And it's a very intimate process too. When I say intimate, I don't mean like, sexual or anything, if anybody thinks that, but what I'm referring to is like, it's very personal. What you need is different than what I need, and what they need is different than what you or I need. And so, we all have to grow different. And I hate it more than anything when people make it seem like you can grow anything anywhere. I just absolutely hate that. Kern, look, I'm gonna be straight up. Lives are like the bane of my existence. I suck at them. No, I do not plan them. A lot of times I just sit down and I turn them on. Um, for the members, I try to do them at a decent hour, but we don't have like a crazy amount of members. So it's hard because a lot of times I have to be prepared just to sit down and have it as like a video for people to come back and watch. So those are kind of hard to plan out. I would like to plan those out, but no, for these, if it's raining here or I'm done for the day, then I'll do it. It's Friday. I've got to edit some videos, but that's about it. So maybe Fridays, some Fridays I'll be doing this more often. But Brian, did you start gardening in 2020? See, catch up here. No. Okay. All right, everybody. So keep it real. Get out in the garden. Get ready. Just because it's getting cold doesn't mean it's over. As a matter of fact, it's just starting. So enjoy. And remember this. I'm going to be starting seeds this week. The next week, I'll be starting seeds. So that time is coming very quickly, and it doesn't stop. So you may get a week or two, a month or two, but January is right around the corner, and most people need to be starting seeds around January of some sort. So just keep that in mind. All right, everybody, have a good day. Keep it real, and we will see you on the flip side.